So I'm doing an impromptu video about Luke Perry's passing. I felt, even though we knew he had a stroke, I was still feeling some shock yesterday. And I called up my friend T, who's also a huge 90210 fan, after I found out. And I said, "Do you know the news?" And he's like, "I know, sweetie, I know." And we both shared our grief together. 90210 is one of those shows that gets pilloried by critics for all the things it did wrong and never gets credit for all the things it did right. And a few years ago, I read Jason Priestley's memoir. And as a lot of you know, he was in a terrible accident. He's very athletic. He does race car driving and other sports. And he flatlined twice, and he was in a coma for 3 weeks. And he said after being in a coma for 3 weeks, the first face he saw was Luke Perry's, who apparently had been by his bedside the entire time. And a lot of people are posting tributes with Brenda and Dylan pictures, and they were definitely, like most people, my favorite 90210 couple. And there's a lot of great Dylan and Brenda compilations on YouTube. If you're interested, by the way, you're welcome. But I think some of the best aspects of Beverly Hills 90210 that led to it lasting for a decade are the underrated scenes of platonic friendships. And those are actually some of the best acting that we get. So one of the scenes that came to mind yesterday as I was crying about Luke Perry, and then I saw the tributes online, and I'm like, oh, I'm not the only person who feels this way. And there's been a lot of memes like, guys, if your girlfriend or wife was a teenager in the 90s, check on her. But I noticed a lot of male friends crying too, or grieving. Some not crying, but a lot of males were just as we're also struck by it, which speaks to the cultural impact of the show. But one of my favorite moments is this scene with Andrea and Dylan. And their friendship was really great to me. Gabrielle Carteris was, I think, the most underrated cast member of the original 90210. And Dylan has found out earlier in the episode that Andrea is having an affair with this jerk named Peter. And she's cheating on Jesse. She and Jesse have a 1-year-old baby, Hannah. And later in the episode, so Andrea rebuffs Dylan when he tries to offer her. He says, if you want to talk about it with anyone, I'm your friend, I won't judge you. And she basically tells him to go to hell. And later in the episode, there's this really moving scene where Andrea and Peter get into a fight. And Dylan sees it. He hears the door slam and the screeching of the tires, and they're having their affair in this motel. And he runs to her, and Luke and Gabrielle are so amazing in this, and she just cries the ugly cry in his arms. And Luke was also good at doing the ugly cry. If the breakup scenes with Dylan and Brenda, everybody knows REM, Losing My Religion, all of those scenes. But in this scene, it's a friendship scene, and she cries and cries to him, and she says, how could I think something that was so false was so true? And in that moment, she realizes that she's really effed up her life. It's not a mistake, right? A mistake is like writing the wrong date on a homework assignment. This is bigger than that. And she just cries in his arms, and there's this like exchange in their eyes and this look, and he hugs her, and that's it. So that's one of my favorite underrated 90210 moments. Another one, not the same, but to a lesser extent, is when Donna has been cheated on by David with that Ariel girl who, whatever. I have nothing positive to say about Ariel. And that was one of the most painful moments for 90210 fans. And she is afraid to see David the next school year after the summer is over. She doesn't want to go to registration. And Dylan tries to comfort her, and he says, what are you afraid of? And she says, well, I guess I'm afraid of seeing David. And Tori spelling in the scene, and Luke says to her, what are you afraid of? And you're afraid of little skinny David Silver? So that's another one of my favorite scenes. And then the Dylan-David relationship. So they don't have much in common, these two characters. When Dylan's father dies, David tries to be there for him, and it's awkward, but that's a lot like real life, right? When you're in a friendship circle with someone, but it's not the person you're closest to, and you try to comfort them, it comes out awkward. Later on, when David has his own addiction issues, and if you watch 90210, they had a lot of addiction storylines. Dylan is the one who flushes his drugs down the toilet. And then what's really cool about the series lasting as long as it did is that after Luke Perry leaves, and he's gone for a few years, and then he comes back for the last few seasons, we see Brian Austin Green and Luke Perry. They're acting as their friendship evolves, conflict and resolution. And so I think he was just, I think most of the cast on that show, they didn't get the credit they deserved. My other favorite platonic friendships on Beverly Hills 90210, I liked, so I like Dylan and Andrea, I mentioned that. To a lesser extent, Dylan and Donna, although they didn't get as many scenes. But I really liked Donna and Andrea, when Donna puts her foot in her mouth and says, last year you were a virgin going to Yale, now you're pregnant. And obviously Andrea's offended by that. Later that day or that night, she comes to Andrea's house with ice cream. And so people remember Brenda and Dylan and Brandon and Kelly and Donna and David, but it's really those friendships, like Shannon Doherty's last episode, aside from the scene with her and Dylan where she says, give me something to come back to. And, you know what happens. But there's this great scene where she's comforting Donna because David's cheated on her with what's-her-face. And then they're lying there in bed, and she says, I love you, they both say to each other. Donna says, I love you, and Brenda says back, I love you too. So anyway, 90210 had a cultural impact that stands the test of time, and it spans multiple generations despite always being panned by the critics. And I really think it's those friendships that to me are the backbone of the show. Like Brandon and Donna had a cool friendship. That to me is the corollary of Dylan and Andrea. And without that friendship, that platonic friendship that stayed that way for 10 years, we would never have Donna Martin Graduates, the single most famous episode in the entire series. So anyway, I am sad about Luke Perry's death. I feel for his family, obviously, the cast, Shannon Doherty's posts on Instagram, Ian's posts on Instagram. It's just heartbreaking. I'm glad that they have those memories, though. But anyway, let me know if you're feeling some kind of way. My cousin wished me a happy birthday, so she remembers my birthday every year. She sends me a card, and I was feeling really, really sad about Luke Perry's death, and then her birthday card arrived in the mail, and then today she called me, and I'm like, thank you for sending me that card. It came at just the right time. So anyway, let me know if you feel some type of way about or if you've ever felt sad about a celebrity passing. Bye.